Hi, everybody. We're calling this subcommittee for DEI to order for August 7th, 2024. We'll start with roll call, noting that all subcommittee members are present, and we'll move to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We do have public comments tonight. Just as a reminder, per policy, there is a 2-minute time limit per speaker. I'll turn it over to Jack to call people forward as he's present in the room tonight.
Thank you, Don. I'd like to call Gina Pagel. State your name and interest in.
Right, so my name is Gina Pagel, and I teach here in the district, and I'm a member of the Waunakee IDEA. Tonight, I'm just speaking as an individual who cares deeply about inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. I serve on the district staff steering committee for DEI, and I'm truly committed to this work. I'm heartened that the district is making strategic steps to grow in its ability to improve in this area. And as the document states, that the district is determined to create a school district where diversity is celebrated, equity is achieved, and inclusion is the norm. I have looked over the document during its several renditions over the
still in draft form, so
since the fall or since the spring, and have some notes that I will be sharing with Tiffany. But in general, I would like to see the committee here push for more specificity in years 2 and 3. There's a lot of repeated information and just kind of thinking through what it might look like to go deeper with each year. And to be really clear about how each of the action steps address the disproportionality-based goals that are at the start of the document around math and literacy and belonging and behavioral incidents. So just being sure that those things are specifically addressed. Otherwise, we can't hope to see change in those areas. And then the other thing that I've spoken a little bit with Tiffany about is I want to be sure that everyone who works in the district can see themselves reflected in the plan and know that everyone is responsible for bringing about the change that we want to see. So just thinking about how we might be really intentional about who is responsible. Yes, there's a lead person, but how can every staff member see themselves reflected in the plan? So thank you again for committing to this work, and that's it. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person I'd like to call up is Joel Lewis. Man, serious member.
Hi, my name is Joel Lewis. Today I'm representing the Waunakee IDEA. I'm the president of the Waunakee IDEA. IDEA again is inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. The reason why I was going to speak today, I was just driving and it just came to me. Well, it didn't just come to me, but speaking did. I say you guys do an awesome job, I believe, in pushing forward the things we need in this district, and I've really seen the effort doing so. I also realize it's a hard task. I know there's a lot of pieces that need to be put in place. You know, with Dr. Brown being here, it's nice that, you know, we can start fresh and move forward as well. But the biggest thing for me is that sometimes I feel like this group is in a silo. So I look at the Waunakee IDEA as that bridge from the community to school district, community, to the village, that type of thing. And sometimes what happens is I feel like we haven't been utilized in terms of partnerships, how we can help you guys more so. I mean, we're here listening, but I think the thing is that we need to be, the Waunakee idea, we need to be more engaged in the process because again, there's still a lot of things that are going on, especially with our families, obviously the kids. And the only way that's going to be minimized is if we do partner more so when we're able to. So I guess for me, what I'm asking is just kind of think about the work that you guys will be doing this coming school year and seeing how that you can partner with us and other families as well, because I know that there's families out there that want to contribute as well, and they just need that space. The other thing is that if you are going to send information out to families, it has to be more than one way of communication. Email, I'll tell you, I received an email, I totally lost it, I didn't know where it went. So if I lost it, other people can lose it. So if you're thinking about trying to recruit people from the community, I would definitely make several attempts to try to put out information so they know that, you know, what's going on. But thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the main feature of this evening is to review the latest version of the draft of the 3-year DEI plan, which is really meant to be a working document. It's not supposed to be cast in iron after this meeting or even after it's reviewed and approved by the broader board. It's still meant to be adjusted as we find things working and not working, and if a lot of progress is made in one area and we need to refocus efforts in another area to adjust as time goes on. Yeah, Tiffany, if you want to take it away with the adjustments that have been made based on our feedback in the last meeting to this version. We can talk about as a team whether we're comfortable taking this to the board meeting in a few weeks to put forward to the broader board.
Yeah, I think the biggest change really is, you know, we talked about at our last meeting is the introduction. So we added since the last meeting, added a lot of information, kind of just setting the stage or adding context to this plan. So it didn't just here's our plan. It's kind of gives some background and history on, you know, why did we create this plan? What is the basis? And then, you know, what are our goals? And then how are we measuring those goals? All those pieces. So I think the introduction is one big piece in terms of what we talked about last time. The other parts, of course, listing the people that were part of our steering committee, those pieces. So those were all added. So that was a big change. And then I think the only other like larger piece when we talked about special observances, which is kind of part of the action step, like implementing lessons, addressing special observances and a protocol, developing a protocol for special observances. So for example, like Black History Month, you know, Women's History Month, whatever it might be. I initially kind of had specific months laid out, and then we talked about like, we don't want any one group to feel excluded or that, oh, you know, we're not doing that till year 3. But yet we know internally, like we can't do everything in 1 year either. So, so that information was just kind of taken out, and we just said we're going to develop lessons around 5 different months each year. So we've been meeting this summer with 5 different groups, and we have follow-up meetings coming up the week of the 19th, just to have some really developed content. And it's more around, if you look at page 7. The bottom here where we talk about a protocol for buildings for each special observance month. What we, I think we talked about this at the last meeting too, but we found that some buildings might do a whole bunch with Hispanic Heritage Month or with Black History Month, and may have speakers come in and bulletin boards. And then at another building, they may do like one thing. So we were just trying to kind of create a baseline for, okay, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to be consistent across the district. Now, of course, in terms of like daily announcements or like, we're gonna adapt things based on the age of the student, obviously. But we wanted to kind of have a baseline in terms of every school is gonna do these things that's in this protocol. So that's what we've been developing this summer is content for each of these areas. And we're trying to get, obviously, there's a lot of content out there for all of the different celebrations, but we're trying to really, when we think about like messaging to staff and messaging to parents, like being very concise, perhaps having links out to more information if people want to read more information, and really focusing in on the celebration pieces. So celebrating, you know, famous people or authors or whatever it might be. And then also highlighting our own staff that come from the culture that we're celebrating that month. So those were kind of some areas. So I think that's the only other, you know, significant change to the plan. There were some additions and changes, like smaller edits from the administrative team. And then I've gotten some, again, just in the last few days, I spelled somebody's name wrong. So there's still some edits and corrections that need to be made. And yeah, and I, you know, just to speak to a little bit of what Gina said too, you know, year 2 and 3, I think were a little bit challenging to put together because we kind of feel like we have to see what we actually accomplish. These are all of our goals. Do we accomplish all those goals? Maybe we make more progress in year 1 or less progress in a certain area. So we know that, kind of like Dawn stated earlier, that it's not going to be a set in stone, like here's all the things we're going to do and that we won't be able to adjust over time. So that is a piece. And also, you know, when it comes to those goals, the disproportionality goals that were laid out early at the beginning of the plan, this was the toughest part, is like, how do we prioritize, you know, all the pieces of this plan? And when we met at our administrative retreat and we had Percy Brown, who we worked with most of last year around DEI, you know, he said, you really got to streamline this. You know, how can you take all of these ideas and action steps and learning and really, you know, streamline it so it's something that's manageable for teachers, manageable for staff, and adds to your, you know, communication pieces for parents in the community. So that's there. We had probably, you know, 20 action steps under each one of these, and we had to really streamline that so that it was, you know, we knew we could accomplish what we set out to accomplish.
Oh, you're muted.
I had muted myself because there's some background office noise. Do you feel like, aside from like adjusting people's, how their names are spelled and things like that, that it'll be ready then to bring to the broader board? Are there any large chunks of information that is going to be added anytime in the immediate future?
Nope. I mean, this was just kind of, I mean, there'll be small edits, but nothing that would significantly change the content.
So. And I apologize because it's probably, I mean, it appears too late, but. So goal number 1 is decrease achievement gaps. And the aim is to decrease gaps by 15%. Reading and math. I'm assuming that's on an individual basis versus a group basis. The thing is, and I have no problems with anything under it, but goal 1, embed a differentiated DEI PD throughout the school year. But I'm not sure I see anything that specifically addresses what we're going to be doing to reach that 15%. You know, the universal instruction for students, we've got speak up strategies. I mean, all of those things I think deal with the culture, the climate, and
Right.
and I think the action steps in goal 1 are all important steps, but. Am I missing that or?
Yeah, I mean, we had kind of a whole list around like our multi-tiered systems of support, which is something we've been working on at the administrative level that we talked about at our administrative retreat, and Monica's already talked with our team quite a bit about like closing gaps and how are we gonna move
Right.
forward in terms of closing gaps. So we could definitely add those. Again, we had a whole bunch of action steps and we were trying to streamline, but I agree, those, you know, first of all, our concept too is that when kids feel like they belong and they feel more connected to their teachers and their peers and in their classroom community, that's going to improve their ability to engage with academics too. So that's kind of one piece, but I agree that definitely could be added in terms of some closing the gaps. It's things we're already planning to do, so certainly could be added to this as well, so. I know we had action steps around that, and we were just, again, trying to kind of streamline what all can we accomplish, but again, there are things that are on the docket for this year. Anyway.
So, and I'm anticipating that, I can't anticipate, okay, so I just reviewed all the different building goals. And based upon the specific academic goal in I'd say the majority of the schools, that's not gonna be achieved. Because they're using different criteria, different assessments, and different academic focus points. And so I'm not gonna stand in the way of approving this. I just see it as a weakness. I think I'd like it to be noted, and somehow, you know, if we do it outside the document, there, you know, that's great, but I just don't see a concreteness there that I think if that's one of our three goals, wow.
Yeah, and that's a piece too, in terms of the closing gaps. I know each building kind of has their one academic goal and one social emotional learning goal, generally speaking. And the question that Monica asked, again, her just kind of getting started here in the last month is, you know, are we really getting down to, you know, looking at specific grade levels and looking at specific demographic groups? Each building does that in their school improvement institute. They really look at data for all of their demographic groups, but not every building sets a specific goal around, we're going to change the change this, the performance or the achievement of this specific demographic group. I believe Heritage has done that in the past, but yeah, that's,
Yes.
The disproportionality plan that was provided to the state, that had more details in it, right?
yep, it did have some more details on it, yep.
Yeah, so I think, Mark,
Maybe, again,
part of what you're getting at is how is it measured? And how is it measured? What's the method? And what does that value change need to be? Part of that is captured in the plan that went to the state. I'm
Right.
not sure if that helped or not, though.
And I would say, you know, when we're looking at performance for the whole district, we have to look at kind of an aggregate, and forward exam is probably the most logical in terms of if you want to look at performance of how your whole district did on forward. But they do have at the building level specific local assessments, whether it's STAR, whether it's iReady, whether it's, you know, that we use in a more diagnostic format to determine like which students need interventions, which students don't need interventions, which students maybe need enrichment. They're, you know, functioning at the 99th percentile. We want to make sure we challenge them. So it would be difficult. I think we would have to have those goals like at the building level. It would be difficult to have all those different goals as part of this plan. But in terms of like what's one way to measure growth in demographic groups is the forward.
Well, then I would also argue, right, that you can following the forward exam, you can identify each student that's we're trying to see improvement for and come up with a number at each grade level, right?
Right.
And we'll know whether it's 15% improvement or not.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, the 15% from like what was submitted in the state, they're looking at like our demographic group of African American students, you know, so in that group, did we have a change of 15%? Yeah, but yes, can we dig down to that specific information? Yeah, absolutely.
And again, too, I guess I will look at the gap. Just not the low achieving, but if you have a group sort of in the middle achieving group, have those kids gone up 15% as well? Right, I mean, because that's a gap too, is, are they middle when they could be higher than that? So,
Yeah.
so hopefully we could,
And I feel like those are the conversations that are maybe had around the School Improvement Institute conversations. As well as like after, each building has their own universal data meeting after they collect data at the beginning of the year, again, whether it's STAR or iReady or, reading data, like they look at all of that information in a universal way to ask that question. Yeah.
so Tim, reasonable time for us to be able to get that data would probably, because it's embargoed, for public. Yeah,
Consumption.
so October next year.
So, I mean, it'll come off embargo probably sometime in the fall. I don't have a date from DPI yet, September, October. Certainly, for full disclosure, I can't talk about it, but we haven't. I can meet with any individual.
So again, individually,
Yeah, I mean,
I
think-
get my
I think
point
to
is,
cut to the chase.
Yeah.
All of these are goals by the end of the school year we're coming in.
Yep.
These are very aggressive.
Yep.
goals. I don't know if we're obligated to have these timelines. So I think it does get to the credibility of the alignment of the goals and the action items in the plan.
Right, and our initial, like 10% was our initial around the academic piece. What DPI wants to see is like, what are you gonna accomplish in this year that you're laying out this plan for? What are you gonna accomplish? And then they check in with us on monitoring calls throughout the year to say like, what progress have you made? What have you accomplished? So I don't think, I mean, we can certainly extend our years and look at that in a lot lengthier time period, but then I think the question will still remain from DPI. So like, what's your accomplishment for this 1 year? So does that mean 5% in year 1, 10% in year 2? I mean, how does that look? We can define that. That doesn't have to be, we can extend the years, we can change the percentages. Our plan for last year is what's kind of driving us into this year. And so we can make adjustments still.
I guess next year I'll be asking for data to identify how we did, whether it was
Right.
how we met it, how many didn't meet it, how many exceeded it. I mean, I think that's a fair thing, once the data is available.
Right, absolutely. And the same is true, and I know Tim was talking about, it's not really like we can't release SCORE data yet. And we haven't received like our Dane County Youth Assessment data yet, and that should be coming out here anytime in the next few weeks. So that's kind of that belonging data.
The other metric, Dane County Youth Assessment, that's only through middle school.
It's given to middle school and high school students.
Okay, so is there a way to determine that measurement at 10% for of culture K6?
Good question.
I mean, and I know at a certain level, you probably can't measure it, I suspect, but is there, what intermediate, is there something? I don't know how far down that goes. It's appropriate to get a measurement of that.
I guess to your point there, Mark, at least when I look at it, I'm not the expert, but if you can change the attitudes at the early grades, you're gonna have better success, right? And what I'm seeing in this plan is everything is geared towards 7-12. And by that time, you probably lost it. So I guess, and it looks like this whole plan is kind of steered towards that 7-12, and maybe that's because you've got the data that you can collect to show improvements. Maybe there's, to Mark's point, maybe there's nothing, in that K6 range that, we can put our fingers on and say, this, we're showing improvement. So, I guess, if we're looking to change the culture, the earlier, in my mind, you can do that, the better you are, but how do you measure?
Yeah, that's the question in terms of having like
And in year 2, there is some 4-6 addition.
yeah, in terms of like speak up strategies and training around some hate speech pieces. There's
And also,
more to it.
the SEL addresses a lot of those issues as well, at the elementary level, through their instructional, curriculum.
Right.
And so that part, I'm not, I think it's being addressed, I think it's being taught, but again, the question is, how do you measure that?
Yeah, and I think, it's a good question, and, as it's stated in the goals at the front of the plan, we're talking about measuring it on the Dane County Youth Assessment, which is given to older students. And if you were to look at the totality of that assessment, you would see why it's reserved for older students. The items on that assessment, which really go back to a state survey, which then comes from a federal survey, is a subset that you draw on to determine that. And they really don't get into what I guess I would call more mature topics. It'd really be a question of modifying the language to make it developmentally appropriate for younger children. So it wouldn't be the Dane County Youth Assessment, but I think, maybe this is something DPI could provide technical support for us on. If we wanted to try to assess that with younger students, we could potentially develop something locally that would mirror that, but then it wouldn't be part of the official Dane County Youth Assessment Administration.
But it would be internal to our system. And we could say, hey, this is.
Yeah, it's a subset of items. Do you have an adult in the school that you feel connected to? I mean, there's like about 4 questions that we pull a composite off of for that. And they're all ones that I think in a way, and again, sometimes by the time you get down to K2, you're dealing with smiley faces and frowny faces.
Right.
But I do think if we wanted to assess it more broadly, we could problem solve.
I think so too.
I guess when you look at the achievement gaps, are we looking, what groups are we defining achievement gap? Are there specific groups we're defining? Help me understand.
Yeah, for the purpose of our disproportionality plan, which is what's submitted to the state, we're specifically focused on African American students and their achievement and performance. So that's the specific demographic group. Now, do we have gaps in other demographic groups? Yes. Students with special needs, students that are English language learners, yes. Do we have gaps in other areas? We certainly do. And if we think that that should be part of this plan, like we can certainly, again, what we submit to DPI, we can definitely do other things in our own plan. This isn't, yeah, I mean, we can add things to what we're doing to for the DPI requirement piece. It's just a matter of, for the DPI requirement piece, we are required to focus on children and their.
So that's coming from DPI.
Because of our disproportionate number of students in special education that are, yes. So we're required to use federal funds to take action steps around changing our system. Like we can't just say, we're gonna change XYZ in special education. It really has to be something that impacts the system of the educational system, not just special ed or not just evaluations, if that makes sense. It has to be broader than that.
I would say, given the rationale behind this whole thing, I don't think that needs to be changed at focus. I don't think your group should be responsible for monitoring the gaps of all of our students. I do believe that's our job as a school board. I believe that's our job as administration and its instructional teams. We do have the board goals to deal with those things, and I think it's up to us to make sure we have the data to make sure that's happening. I believe that's a major part of the vision of Dr. Kelsey Brown. And so I think for this first year, with the first year, 3 years, you just keep your focus where it is. That'd be my recommendation.
Because we could certainly add in terms of like the analysis, adding that the analysis or this at our universal data meetings that there's gonna be analysis of that demographic data. And I mean, those are things that from my perspective are already happening, but it can certainly be added.
Are there any other questions or comments? No. Okay. From the conversation, what I'm hearing is that we feel comfortable taking this, understanding that it is a draft, to the broader board for their comments, and then go from there with noted opportunities to improve it over time.
And I think we could, and I may make some tweaks just based on our conversation here in terms of, if there's things I feel like the data analysis piece. And Tim and I can maybe talk more about the, creating our own assessment that kids could take that, be relatively simple, again, a subset of, 4 to 6 questions around that belonging piece, because I think that would be interesting.
I guess one of the things that I've, looked at over time is what you measured. What I'm hearing is our one measurement point is the forward exam, which is once a year. Is there any other measurements that tools that are out there that give us a better look at the progress? Because basically we're going to do this a year from now, because that's when we get the data, and it takes you a whole year to then, kind of come up with the next plan, right? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? Are there mechanisms that say this is working and this is not?
Yeah, I would say I would argue, not to say being negative with the board exam, but I would argue our local assessments that we give kids, whether it's STAR or iReady or it used to be Fountains something now it'll be qualitative reading inventory, like those diagnostic measures give us much more information and in a very timely manner. We get the information right away. We can use that to design intervention groups, instructional groups, all of those pieces. So yes, those are all better measures. My thinking is that, those should be somewhat predictive of, an overall increase. So again, that's really the forward exam is for ease of like, how can we look at the whole district without saying, okay, well in STAR, we want to do this and iReady, we want to do this. And, it's just a little bit more like, I feel like those are the specific goals that the building level really looks at in terms of we want to see progress in this grade level or this demographic group around an academic piece.
But I guess what I'm seeing out of this plan is there's not a roadmap that says, and I'm not, asking you to put the roadmap in there, because then this will be a 40-page document.
Yeah, that's true.
But, I guess in my mind, how do we know sooner that, hey, what we're doing is working?
Yeah.
And
Well, I think Tiffany suggested that it'd be possible mid-year to identify off of, I know STAR is done periodically. I'm not sure exactly what the increments are, but the middle of the year STAR exam would be a benchmark that could indicate, okay, where are we at this point? If we wanted to hear about it, or more importantly, to help direct the focus on the kids who need to be making that movement. I'm not sure how that works, if it's done the same amount of time as the STAR test, but
I think it's 3 times a year.
but that again, I think you have a mid-year point where you could get that data and that would be, as you said, predictive of what would happen in the floor. The STAR is very close to. I mean, the end numbers are very comparable, from what I've looked at over the last 2-3 years. And so.
I
We do
would
have
say
some
that-
resources to come up with that midpoint.
I would suggest that, you know, if this is approved, you know, then, you know, let's, set some quarterly goals, you know, where, you know, you can come back, you know, to this, committee and say, hey, this is working, or this is not working, this is what we have to change, you know, because if we're approving this, you know, I think what we should have the opportunity to say, you know, things are improved.
Right, yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I think it makes sense to use some of that mid-year data, to help us see where we're on the right trajectory.
Because otherwise, you know, you're monitoring this once a year and, you know, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I guess. It sounds very simple in here, but I don't want to downplay everything the buildings do in terms of looking at data and creating intervention groups and really digging in to support kids. So I was just trying to come up with what's a aggregate measure that rather than getting down to
And I
the
understand
building
that it's
level, yeah,
working, you know, trying to improve, because that's continuous improvement.
right. Mhm.
That's what we're all about, right? But, it would be interesting to understand, are we improving versus coming back once a year saying, hey, you know, we're at 16%.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, talking with my employees, you know, we're not doing annual reviews, we're doing quarterly reviews, you know, so that, you know, at the end of the year, they know whether they're on track or not.
That makes sense.
And the data's there. I mean, that's the data's there. So I think if we had a mid-year report, that'd be helpful. For sure on number 1 and number 3. You know, number 3 should be pretty easy to compare behavioral incidents from year 1 to year 2. I mean, pre-year 1, so 23-24 school year.
Fair.
Yeah, so, yeah. Madam Chairman, we need a motion.
Well, I was gonna ask about future meetings before we adjourn.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
thinking,
I mean, a motion on this or not?
oh,
Yes, you do. You need to take it.
okay.
I move we move the comprehensive plan to the full board.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So for future meetings, I guess I was of a mind that we would not meet in September, since students are just coming back, and that we would meet again in October to see if, how things have been going with the staff DEI group, and see if there are adjustments to the plan already as of October. And then we can talk about if we want to add some element per Joel's comment about how to engage with the community and maybe take into consideration other ways of measuring efficacy of the plan based on the parents and community members an idea. They may have some ideas as well of other quantitative measures or even qualitative ones that we want to take into consideration. So,
You know,
so I was thinking,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, so I was thinking in October, sometime before Halloween. Can't remember when students have their 2-day, there's teacher development day, professional development days that classically happen in October, but I was thinking around the week of the 14th to target. But we're gonna check.
I was wondering if there would be value actually meeting in September to try to look at the year going forward, are there certain things beyond the disproportionality plan that we might want to bring in to the meetings, and when would we want to do that? Just one small or not so small example would be, I know the Dane County assessment is available or will soon be available to WCCC as well as our administration. In the past, we've had the coordinator for the program share some of that with us, the report with us much sooner than we oftentimes would get otherwise. And so there might be other topics or things that we might want to project for throughout the year.
And I agree with that because, you know, this plan here is one group. You know, there's other groups that we probably have to work with as well to set up plans to improve discipline, all that kind of stuff, and maybe not.
And I think that discussion could involve some of what Joe was talking about as well. I mean, this group, why couldn't we have part of our agenda set up with a sharing session with the idea group? Things that families are bringing to them that might be something we can work on together, that sort of thing. So to me, if we have time in September, I'm not sure the schedules of everybody, but I'd rather have a meeting to kind of, you know, work on that concept going forward. Does that sound worth doing?
Yeah, the earlier part of the agenda that you're talking about, the results of a report, is that something that was brought to the DEI team in the past?
The Dane County survey? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
As of today, it's not available unless you've heard it otherwise, but I checked with Lisa this week and she said it's not available
Lisa
yet.
would be the first one to get it.
Yeah, so because I know a lot of people are asking her for if it's available, and she said it's not yet. So hopefully, she said it should be in the next few weeks, is what she said this week.
So I guess I would say if we meet in September, it should probably be targeting the end of September because the school year doesn't start until after Labor Day. So the 3rd. If we want to look at the week of the 23rd, assuming that we have that report. Otherwise, I don't know of any true agenda items to cover other than seeing that report.
Yeah, maybe, I'm gonna be traveling the last week of September, or the week of December 23rd. Let's see.
September 23rd.
I'll be traveling. I'll be out of pocket the week of the 23rd. Then I'll be out of pocket the week of October 7th.
Okay. Do we want to look at the first week of October then? Starting on September 30th, October 1st through the 4th?
That's you're going, right?
No, I'm gone the 6th through the 12th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
The 22nd through the 28th. And maybe to kill two, you know, we could have, you know, a meeting the 30th through the 4th sometime during that time frame.
I could do Monday or Tuesday that week.
7:30.
Morning, sure. Yep.
I'm not.
The community has said that they prefer the 5:30 start times, not AM meetings for DEI.
You have 7:30?
No,
We've had public comments that the AM time is not considered favorable for DEI subcommittee meetings.
How about 5:30 on the 1st?
That works for me.
Is that okay with you, Jeff, or
Is that Wednesday? That's
just Tuesday?
Tuesday works.
Okay,
That's what we're doing. 5:30 on October 1st.
Yep.
All right, so I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
You too.
Rebecca, I'm almost here. I just saw your text.